I froze the moment the bailiff called my name. My heart seized, and my blood ran cold. I gripped the edge of the witness stand with trembling fingers as the courtroom lights bore down on me. I heard a collective gasp as my neighbor's venomous whisper echoed in my ears. "She's a fraud." I swallowed, my throat raw, as all eyes turned toward me. I wondered how I, a simple mother and nurse, ended up under this scorching glare. I felt the glint of the judge's gavel ready to strike, my world apart. I heard my own pulse thunder in my ears, louder than any objection. I saw my son's face in the gallery, his eyes wide, full of fear and confusion. I realized this single accusation could cost me everything: my reputation, my custody, my peace. I sensed the crowd leaning forward, waiting for the truth to shatter or redeem me. I clenched my jaw as my mother-in-law rose, clutching a sealed envelope. I watched her white knuckles peel back the paper. I felt the room tilt. I held my breath. I whispered a prayer. What will she reveal? I am Dr. Elena Morris, a pediatric, nurse practitioner and single mother to 7-year-old Lucas. I wake before dawn, the hum of fluorescent hospital lights greeting me in the empty staff locker room. I pour coffee into my favorite chipped mug, the one Lucas painted with rainbow handprints, and brace myself for a 12-hour shift. I love the quiet before the first code blue, when the hallways are still and my sneakers echo against sterile tile. I introduce myself to every tiny patient. Their names, their favorite foods, the names of their pets. I believe in miracles, in second chances, in the healing power of a gentle word. I return home at dusk to a cramped apartment above my mother-in-law's house, my own home that I can barely afford. I clear dinner dishes while Lucas recites his multiplication tables under the dim glow of a string of holiday lights. I tuck him into bed, smoothing back his curly hair, kissing his forehead. I whisper good night, and pat the framed photo of his father, a man I divorced 2 years ago after he walked out. I remind myself every night that I'm doing my best. I register for evening classes at the local university, an advanced certification that could bump my salary. I juggle hospital charts and homework essays, determined to build a better life for Lucas and me. I count each dollar before paying rent, skipping my own needs so he can have a new winter coat. I cherish weekends at the park, chasing Lucas on the swings, his laughter a balm to my tired soul. I never tell him how exhausted I feel. I never admit my fear of failing him. I never mention the tension with my neighbor, Mrs. Caldwell, her sour smile, her whispered criticisms of my irresponsible single mother lifestyle. I smile politely when she crosses the fence to chat, concealing the tight knot of anxiety in my chest. I volunteer at the PTA, baking cookies and folding flyers, desperate to belong. I am proud of my achievements, my nursing degree, my orderly, home, my loyal friends at the hospital. I believe the world sees me as competent, caring, reliable. I believe I'm safe, until the day Mrs. Caldwell accused me in front of Lucas's teacher of falsifying my credentials. I replay her words in my mind. You're lucky to have him. I felt a chill when she walked away, leaving a trail of doubt. I convinced myself it was nothing more than gossip, until the day it followed me here, into this courtroom. I squeezed, my eyes shut, recalling every step that led me to this moment. Why did she go this far? What secret does she think she's uncovered? I stepped into the hallway outside my classroom when Mrs. Caldwell cornered me after pickup. I greeted her with a, "Hello?" but her lips curled in disdain. I felt her gaze bore into me as she whispered, "Your license number looks fabricated. You're up to something." I blinked, stunned. I glanced down at my crisp name badge. Elena Morris, NP, State License, A839274, and wondered if those numbers were enough to protect me. I tried to explain, but she shook her head, her voice low and clipped. I felt a pang of dread when she mentioned she'd called the board of nursing. I watched her stride away, leaving me with a knot in my stomach. I cursed under my breath, wishing I'd never waved to her at Lucas's school carnival. I chastised myself for every harmless smile. I returned to class, my hands sweaty against the chalk. I taught phonetics through a tremor of uncertainty, my voice wavering when I pronounced schwa. I imagined every parent questioning my competence. I replayed Mrs. Caldwell's words during lunch, my sandwich go cold. I scrolled through emails sent to the nursing board. Automated acknowledgments, no immediate action. I tried to calm my racing heart, but the seed of doubt was planted. I noticed the subtle shifts. Co-workers avoiding my eye, the receptionist's stilted courtesy when I asked about my schedule. I felt the weight of invisible eyes tracking my every move. I questioned every decision. Was my charting thorough enough? Had I misread a vital sign? I can't mess this up, I told myself. I tucked my fear beneath layers of professional composure. And then, the first official letter arrived at my apartment. I unfolded the crisp envelope, bearing the state seal, and recognized the board's return address. I felt my knees weaken. I heard Lucas's laughter upstairs, his footsteps bounding. Down. I stared at that envelope, the courtroom echoing around me. I wondered, what accusation would be inside? What truth would they demand I prove? I pressed the paper to my chest, my breath catching. What have they uncovered now? I stood at the defense table, my hands clammy as I unfolded the letter from the nursing board. I read the accusation aloud to the judge. Alleged falsification of professional credentials and patient records. I felt my jaw go slack. I felt the courtroom press in on me, every eye a spotlight on my shame. I saw my mother-in-law's lips twitch with satisfaction. I felt Lucas's small hand clutch the pew railing behind him, his knuckles white. I swallowed against the lump in my throat. I whispered, "No," so quietly it barely registered. I remembered the afternoon in my living room when Lucas asked, "Mom, why won't Mrs. Caldwell talk to you anymore?" I forced a smile and said, "She's busy, sweetie." I lied. I crumpled the letter and stuffed it into my purse. I left my shift at the hospital early, my nurse's cap feeling heavier than ever. I bolted out into the parking lot, my breath ragged. I heard the wail of sirens in the distance, a cruel reminder that in my world, emergencies were routine. But this felt catastrophic. I drove aimlessly until I found myself at the playground where Lucas learned to ride his bike. I watched him pedal in dizzying circles, carefree, oblivious to the storm brewing around us. I stood at the edge, my heart splitting in two. I thought, how can I protect him if I can't even protect myself? I unzipped my purse and pulled out the letter again. I traced the board's seal with my fingertip. I remembered burying my mother's medical files after she passed, her handwritten notes, her battles with bureaucracy. I realized I had become the target of the same ruthless machinery. I clenched my phone and dialed my sister, Marisol. I heard her groggy, "Hello?" at 2 a.m. I cried into the receiver, telling her everything. I felt an unnameable anger rise. I screamed into the night, "They're trying to take my license, my livelihood, my son." I collapsed onto the swings, my legs kicking at the air. I rocked back and forth, tears mingling with sweat. I thought of Lucas's face at school that morning, his confusion, his question. "Mom, what happens if you lose your job?" I froze at that memory. I whispered, "Then we'll lose everything." I felt my world teetering on an abyss. I realized this wasn't just about credentials. It was about my worth as a mother, as a professional, as a human being. I slammed my phone shut and raced home, my vision blurred. I barged into the apartment to find my mother-in-law sorting through my files. Medical charts, diplomas, performance. Reviews. I heard her mutter, "If she can't defend herself, maybe she doesn't deserve to." I felt bile rise in my throat. I grabbed a stack of papers, and we faced off across the kitchen table. I saw rust on the faucet, chipped paint on the cabinets. Our shared space felt contaminated by her hostility. I shoved the files toward her. I growled, "These prove every day I've worked 3 hospitals, logged thousands of hours, saved countless lives." I pointed to my diploma, framed above her living room couch. I felt her gaze flicker to the gold seal. I clenched my fists. Then, Lucas's sob broke the standoff. I spun around. I saw him in the doorway, tears streaking his cheeks. I watched his small body shake with fear. I felt my heart shatter. I rushed to him, gathering him into my arms. I held him as he wept, whispering, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry this is happening." I felt every failure I'd ever feared press into my chest. I looked up at my mother-in-law, her arms folded, her expression unreadable. I asked through clenched teeth, "Why here? Why him?" I heard only the ticking of the kitchen clock. I wondered if she saw me as a fraud. I wondered if the board saw me as a monster. I wondered if the judge saw me as guilty already. I realized the crisis wasn't just on paper. It was in my son's tears, in the coldness of my own reflection. I steadied myself. I straightened Lucas's hair. I met my mother-in-law's gaze. I whispered, "I will fight." I stepped back, toward the courtroom doors. I heard the echo of my mother's voice. Truth lives in the brave heart. I gripped the letter once more. Then, what choice do I have? What if my next move seals my fate? I entered the courtroom with a determination that felt like steel in my veins. I carried a sealed USB drive in my palm, my only weapon against a lie. I felt the hush settle like a blanket as I approached the defense table. I slid the drive across, the polished wood toward my lawyer, Ms. Whitaker. I saw her nod, her jaw set. I heard the judge's gavel rapping for order. I forced a steady breath. I cleared my throat. I spoke into the microphone. "Your Honor, I have new evidence." I watched the judge's eyebrows rise. I watched Mrs. Caldwell's lips tighten into a sneer. I felt my pulse pound. I remembered the day I found the security footage. I had arrived home after that terrifying weekend, when the board's letter landed like a grenade in my life. I hesitated at the door, fearing what I might discover. Another betrayal waiting to be unveiled. I flicked on the porch camera feed from my phone. I saw Mrs. Caldwell crouched under the street lamp, rifling through my mailbox. I saw her extract an envelope, my board notification, before sneaking down the sidewalk. I watched her slip the envelope to an unknown accomplice, a tall man in a hooded jacket. I watched their hushed exchange. I felt a hot surge of anger. I downloaded the footage. I handed it to Ms. Whitaker that very night. I vowed to use it here, under oath. I sat back as Ms. Whitaker rose. I watched her insert the drive into the court's computer. I felt the courtroom lights dim as the projection flickered to life on the white screen. I heard the faint whir of the machine. I watched my neighbor's stained glass windows shimmer behind her. I saw Mrs. Caldwell's reflection in the courtroom glass. Pride turning to shock. I watched the video. Mrs. Caldwell's hands, the stolen letter, the hushed meeting. I saw the clerk's lips part in surprise. I saw the bailiff's footsteps, slow. I saw Lucas's small fist clench at my side. I felt a flicker of hope. I watched the video conclude with the man slipping the envelope back, now unmarked, onto my porch. I heard my own intake of breath echo. I glanced at Mrs. Caldwell. Her face went pale. I heard Ms. Whitaker say, "Your Honor, the prosecution has knowingly used evidence acquired through theft and manipulation." I felt a shift in the room. I watched prosecutors exchange heated whispers. I watched the judge lean forward, steepling his fingers. I sensed the momentum swinging in my favor. I saw the prosecution's lead attorney stand, his expression tight. I heard him say, "We concede that evidence was unlawfully obtained. However, the board's concerns remain." I swallowed. I realized the battle wasn't over. I felt my hands clench into fists. I felt Lucas's warmth beside me. I whispered to him, "We're not done yet." I watched Ms. Whitaker call my mother-in-law to the stand. I saw her stride forward, shoulders rigid. I felt my heart hammer. I heard her begin her testimony. I believed Ms. Morris was dangerous to the children. I watched my breath catch as she spun her tale, each word dripping with self-righteous contempt. I felt bile rise. I bit my lip. And then, the doors at the back of the courtroom swung open. I heard a measured voice. "Your Honor, if I may." I turned. I saw the hospital's chief of staff, Dr. Patel, entering in a crisp white coat, his arms clutching a dossier. I watched the courtroom murmur. I squeezed Lucas's hand. I watched Dr. Patel approach the bench. I heard him clear his throat. I felt the air shift. I heard him address the judge. "I apologize for arriving late. I have here a complete audit of Dr. Morris's credentials and patient records, authenticated by the state registry and independent auditors." I saw the judge nod. I felt an electric thrill. I watched Dr. Patel hand over the thick dossier. I heard the clerk flip through pages stamped verified. I saw the judge's gaze shift from Ms. Caldwell to me. I felt tears sting my eyes. I heard the judge say, "This new documentation confirms Dr. Morris's qualifications and impeccable record. The court will now consider all admissible evidence." I felt my knees tremble. I watched Mrs. Caldwell slump into her seat, defeated. I heard a collective exhale. I sensed the weight of doubt lift from my shoulders. I felt Lucas's small chest rise and fall next to me. I whispered, "We did it." I watched the judge call for a brief recess. I felt the courtroom doors swing shut behind us. I felt the world shift on its axis. I wondered, is this the moment everything turns in my favor? Then, how will the judge view each piece of this story? I rose from my seat as the judge returned, my legs trembling beneath me. I felt the hush in the courtroom stretch out like a held breath. I gripped the edge of the defense table, my knuckles white as marble. I watched the judge peruse the audit dossier, each stamped page a nail in the coffin of doubt. I heard the soft shuffle of papers, the muted thud of the gavel. I closed my eyes, recalling every tear I'd shed in fear of disgrace. I recalled Lucas's small fist clenching mine when I told him, "Mommy's going to fight." I felt his warmth steady my quake. And then, the judge spoke. "The court finds no merit in the allegations of falsification. All charges are hereby dismissed." I exhaled, as if I'd been underwater my whole life and finally found air. I felt my shoulders slump, weightlifting in a rush of relief. I heard a ripple of whispers. Relief, disbelief, vindication. I opened my eyes to see Mrs. Caldwell slump, her head bowed. I watched my mother-in-law cover her mouth, tears glinting in her eyes. I felt a dizzying swirl of triumph and exhaustion. I stepped toward Lucas in the gallery. I saw his face light up, confusion melting into joy. I felt him run into my arms, his small body shaking with sobs of relief. I hugged him tighter than ever before. I felt the press of suits and dresses, the journalists snapping photos, the attorneys lowering their voices. I saw Dr. Patel at the back, offering a proud nod. I felt my eyes sting when I noticed Ms. Whitaker smile, her fierce pride shining in its warmth. I straightened my spine, my heart pounding a victorious rhythm. I heard the judge adjourn the court. I watched the bailiff rapping the gavel one final time. I felt Lucas's hand slip into mine as we walked out together. I inhaled the cool hallway air, each breath a promise. We're safe. I paused beneath the courtroom's grand arch, light flooding through stained glass. I whispered, "We made it." I felt hope bloom in my chest, bright, unbreakable. I learned that truth doesn't announce itself with fanfare. It demands to be defended. I learned that a single voice of doubt can threaten everything you've built, yet a single act of courage can restore it. I learned that family isn't only bound by blood, it's fortified by loyalty, honesty, and fierce advocacy. I learned that when you stand for yourself, you stand for the ones you love. I learned that the darkest moments can reveal your brightest strength. I learned that even in the face of manipulation, the light of evidence will shine through. I learned that a mother's love isn't measured by perfect days, but by the battles she's willing to fight. I believe that if you've ever been crushed by false accusations, you have the right and the power to demand justice. I believe that speaking your truth can move mountains. I believe that in every courtroom of life, your voice matters. I believe that sometimes the fiercest evidence isn't a document or a video. It's the unwavering faith of those who believe in you. I believe that you don't need permission to claim your truth. I invite you now. If you've ever felt unheard or labeled a fraud, comment below with your story. If you found the courage to stand up for yourself, share this video to inspire someone in need. If you believe in the power of truth, hit like and subscribe for more stories of resilience and redemption. I promise, your voice can change everything. And then, let's keep fighting together. I rose as the judge returned, limbs trembling yet determined. I felt the hush settle like dusk, heavy and expectant. I gripped the defense table. My knuckles went white. I watched him scan the audit dossier, each stamped page validating my years of service. I heard the soft shuffle of binding paper and the muted rap of the gavel. I closed my eyes, recalling Lucas's tearful plea. Don't let them take you away. I drew a steady breath, remembering every late-night study session and every shift I'd worked. And then, the judge's voice rang clear. All charges are dismissed. I exhaled, as if surfacing from the deepest dive. I felt relief flood through my chest, warm, cleansing. I opened my eyes to see Mrs. Caldwell slump, defeated. I watched my mother-in-law's tears glint in the courtroom light. I stepped forward, meeting Lucas in the gallery, his face shining with disbelief. I felt his small arms wrap around me, in a fierce embrace. I heard the crowd's soft murmur. Vindication, surprise, something like joy. I walked out under the stained glass arch, each step lighter than air. I whispered to Lucas, "We're home." I learned that truth demands more than belief. It demands bold defense. I learned that a single act of courage can shatter a web of lies. I learned that family's strength isn't perfect days, but the battles we fight together. I learned that evidence isn't just paper. It's the lifeline of justice. I believe that if you've ever been silenced by doubt, you owe it to yourself to speak up. I believe your voice can move the heaviest gavel. I believe that admitting fear doesn't weaken you, it galvanizes your resolve. I believe that every accusation is an opportunity to prove your worth. I invite you, if you've faced falsehoods, share your story in the comments. If you found this journey inspiring, like and share to empower someone today. If you're new, subscribe, because every truth deserves its day in court. I promise, together our voices will always rise above doubt.